You can't win a football game unless you can stop the run and kick extra points when necessary or field goals. But the American church in the 20th century and still today is structured as if it only has a single dimensional game. It generates revenue through tithes and offerings, the giving of its members. But we have no defense and no special teams, if you will. The social game, engaging your community.
The funding model for the American church is being disrupted. And it isn't just a trend that's coming. This is something that's happening now. But the good news is that the churches that adapt won't just survive, they'll actually thrive and expand the impact that they're having in their community. I'm Dan Pourbaix with Parable. We're your church finance team. And we're talking with Greg Daley, who's the founder and CEO of Parable, and also with Mark DeYmaz. He's pastor and CEO of the church Economist. Now, Mark, we're joined with him as a treat because he's a leading voice in the country on what we're talking about in this episode, literally writing the book on the subject of the coming revolution in church economics. Now, it's not just coming like in the distance. This is happening now. And the funding model for the 21st century church is being completely disrupted. So, we've talked about economy and whether that resolves and gets back to normal soon or not. This revolution is coming and it's happening for every church. And it's something every church needs to be thinking about outside of what's happening with the economy right now. The thing also that I love about this is it's not just about trying to increase income. These are things that will also increase your impact in the community as well. So churches are adding tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars of additional funding, and they're opening new opportunities to be on mission in their community. So this is just amazing opportunity. So with that, Mark, let's start with the big picture. What is this coming revolution in church economics?
Yeah, well, I appreciate how you're talking about that, specifically, Dan, about it's not just generating more income. It's all about missional vibrancy and being able to expand your impact and kingdom impact in your community by having more revenue. In terms of a movement, yeah, these are the early days of a movement. It's been bubbling for a while. There's traction now. It's not yet a capital M movement or a capital R revolution, but as you say, it's coming fast. And the sooner you get on board with that and understand the things we're talking about, the sooner you'll be able to not only increase revenue, but as Dan, you said, increase missional vibrancy and impact. Very simply, imagine a football team where you tried to play offense, defense, and special teams with all the same players. So Tom Brady is not only the quarterback, he has to be a linebacker, and he's also the deep snapper or the long snapper, right? Imagine the one coach is coaching offense, defense, special team. There's one playbook with all of these things in it. There's one set of metrics. None of that would work, right? And essentially, the coming revolution in church economics is built on a fundamental shift, a disruptive shift that must take place in each local church. And that is to move away from a single dimensional game, again, with a football analogy, as if offense is the only game. You can't win a football game unless you can stop the run and kick extra points when necessary or field goals. But the American church in the 20th century and still today is structured as if it only has a single dimensional game. It only has an offense. It has a spiritual game, and that game is coached by pastors and played by pastoral types and generates revenue through tithes and offerings, the giving of its members. But we have no defense and no special teams, if you will. The social game, engaging your community, advancing justice, compassion, and mercy. As you said, generating revenue through grants and donations outside your church to support ministry or missional impact in your community beyond what tithes and offerings could otherwise do. We need to establish that separate team. We advocate a 501c3 coached by MSW types, played by people who say, I have such a heart for the homeless. It generates grants and donations outside the church. And then we also need a financial team, not the budget team, all that. Of course, you have to have that. But this is a team of entrepreneurs and economic specialists who can leverage the assets of a church to generate for-profit ROI, business revenue. And that structural shift would be essentially, using a football analogy, American football, moving away from having only an offense to creating a defense and special teams, the spiritual game, the community engagement game, the for-profit financial game. And with the right coaches, the right players, the right metrics, and the revenue from tithes and offerings, grants and donations, for-profit business income, not only helps a church survive, but to thrive in the 21st century, to get to ultimate sustainability. And this is the disruptive shift that must take place if you're going to play this game well in the 21st century.
Wow. this is, you use the word disruption, which I think it's totally disruptive to what we've thought of as churches. What's the mind shift that needs to change, or how do they even prepare for this? How does a pastor not feel overwhelmed or feel like that's out there, but how do they understand that this is how it's going to be happening here? We need to respond to this.
Yeah, well, I've written actually 2 books on that, not for a shameless plug, but the book Disruption, the book The Coming Revolution in Church Economics helps pastors think through this. You have to think about it theologically. In an earlier workshop, we talked about, for instance, the parable of the good steward. There are stewards, good stewards are taking what God's given them and doubling it, their minds to generate more understanding about scripture, their mouths to see more people come to Jesus, right? Their assets to generate more revenue to do more good for the kingdom of God. This is good stewardship, not sitting on your asset and just managing inevitable decline. So we have to understand or think deeply about things theologically, also sociologically. For instance, there's a generational shift in attitudes and approaches to giving. Nearly 80% of giving to the American church as of 2019 was given by people born before 1964. These people as well are the ones who volunteer. They promote the product, so to speak. They give not only sacrificially on Sunday, but to projects, extra money, if you will, to mission support or to a building campaign. The younger you are, you tend to choose one of those 3 things. Another way to say it is that for every one person, let's just say a 60-year-old white man who dies, who leaves, moves out of state, gets sideways with your church, for every giving unit that's that age, born before 64, that leaves your church for one reason or another, how many, quote, giving units will it take amongst millennials and Gen Z to replace that one giver? And if you think it's 1-to-1, you don't understand sociology. You don't understand income inequality and wealth gaps and things that are happening at a demographic level that'll require for every one person who leaves at least 4, 7, maybe 10 or more people in your context. That's giving units, which will require at least 3 times that number to join your church just to get those giving units. Now, how do you
Wow.
understand all that? Again, I've written books about this that helps you to get into it. But theology, Dan, good sociology, understand it, and then just practically looking at where you are, what you have, what you don't have, what you could do if you had it, and then structuring the team as we're talking about, building out 3 separate teams to play the one game in the 21st century. And by the way, we're not even talking about AI. Imagine within 5 years, by 2030, it's already happening, as you said. You're going to look out at a congregation and 40% of those people just lost their job in the last 12 to 18 months. And you're going to say, we need you to give more. Okay. The point that's a whole technological thing, right? So we have to understand things theologically, sociological, technologically, and then get the folks around us, know who we are, who we're not. That tells us who we need, and get those people on the team to think things through, free your mind, and restructure again, moving away from a 20th century structure to a 21st century structure in your church.
Yeah, wow, that's good. Now, Greg, Parable works with hundreds of churches. How are you starting to see this revolution play out in real time with churches right now?
Yeah, I think it starts with that. The churches on the front line of this movement are really churches that have already experienced some of this, and maybe they are in a city that, for instance, you would never be able to own a piece of property in as a church. Like, property is just astronomical, and yet they've been able to figure out, how can we leverage something, building these other things that actually are a community engagement piece, while also providing for this property that we didn't think we could ever afford if we just had to afford it out of our own budgets. What I love about this revolution is it really takes the pressure off of the pastor being the person that's trying to make the church grow, and it empowers the saints to do the work of the ministry, which is really what it was meant to be anyway from the beginning. But somehow we got off on like expecting our pastor to be all these things that they're not, and so it opens the door for really empowering. If the CEO of, let's say, just the CEO of UPS goes to your church, right? Like is the best use of that person's brain to guide cars in the parking lot? Like, I mean, oftentimes, I know some of these CEOs out there that are willing to do whatever, right? Like, they are willing to serve at whatever level. And Wouldn't it be great to engage their brain in a way? If you scaled a company as big as UPS, like you might have a brain for multiplying money, like Mark said, and it's a completely different skill set than that spiritual game. You don't want to lose the spiritual game. The church is about the spiritual things. And yet, how can we better leverage those? So we're seeing churches now starting to do that. Some great examples of that all over the country, one of which I visited. They have a Nashville hot chicken joint that's funding their church. They have a coffee shop that's like more than a coffee shop, that's built into the church. It's pushing the revolution of coffee in their small town. They linked with the city and have a container park now they're working on that has all kinds of stores, and so they're bringing life to this what was kind of a dead city, bringing life back to it. The city is seeing it and going, yeah, we'll actually help fund that because you're bringing artists now together and the city feels thriving again and vibrant. Like the church, if the church stopped what they were doing, that city would probably go back to dying. And so now the city's like, hey, we don't want to lose this church, right? We don't want to lose this aspect. That's where it really gets exciting.
Oh, I love that. And I love the idea of going to a church that gives me Nashville hot chicken and coffee, right? Like what a great. No, but I think about that. That's funding the church, but it's also providing jobs that are probably for people in the church, but also people not in the church. And so you're getting non-believers that are coming to work and you're building relationships. You're getting unbelievers who are coming to your coffee shop every week and you're building relationship. And so now you have more funding that you're doing, but you're also opening the door for a mission in there, and you're transforming a community that was abandoned or struggling or whatever that looked like, and now you're bringing life to it. So what an incredible story there. So Mark, you launched recently the Church Economist, and I wanted to just ask, like, what was the aha moment that led you to launch it, and what was the gap you were seeing in how pastors are being equipped?
Yeah, I think on two fronts. One is there's people jumping into this space because they see a need, they see there's a coming revolution, if you will. They don't necessarily have the expertise, but they see what's coming and somehow they're positioning themselves as middlemen or middlewomen in it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I appreciate the hustle. But how much better to go to sources with experiential knowledge that can actually help you as a pastor, your church, be more efficient with your time, with your money, get farther faster when you're going to sources with experiential knowledge. So, one is I wanted to create a hub for that. And also in the space, there are very credible people. I like to say that if the entire revolution could be represented in 16 slices of a pie, for instance, different aspects from renting your building to starting a nonprofit or what have you, if there were 16 aspects, that there's credible people that have one of these slices or one or two or even three of the slices, but nobody has all 16. And I wanted to provide a resource for pastors in the American church, a one-stop shop, if you will, where when you come through the front door, of course, a website or whatever, you've got all the doctors, you've got all the lawyers, all the practitioners are already there available to you. Think about it like a doctor, Dan. You go to the doctor and you go, I got a knee problem, right? And you go to a hospital, let's say, go see our knee specialist. Somebody else comes in, got a heart problem, go see our heart specialist. So to get those type of practitioners to cover all 16 bases, if you will, and by the way, there's probably more, I'm just using 16 as an analogy, but to have those practitioners experienced, credible, trustworthy in one space, because otherwise a pastor is going to, well, I could rent my building, so they go over here. But that doesn't help them with accounting, for instance, or that doesn't help them with nonprofit development. And you could be sending pastors or churches to all these different resources. How good would it be to put that in one center, if you will, a hub for all things church economics? And so that's what we've done, the churcheconomist.com. And we've started very simply with an assessment as well as a sustainability sprint, which you can read about on our website. And I know at Parable, Greg, Dan, all of you are partners with us in that. And so we're developing tools with partners that are credible. And all that'll be listed, I think, after this on your website.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We'll have links to that. Mark, thank you so much for sharing about that. And thank you for taking the time to develop these tools. And I don't think you fully kind of explained the assessment, which is fine. But just for people watching, I mean, it's only going to take you, 6-7 minutes, but it's very comprehensive to think through this area. And it's going to give you a score, and it's going to help even just reveal, even in the questions alone, opportunities that you have and things to be thinking about in your church. And then the sprint will help you just dig in and really create a specific plan for your church and get that vision for how you can do this in your church. So we've got all the details for that on liveyourparable.com. And again, this revolution is happening, whether your church is feeling it not or yet. Most churches are going to have to shift how they fund their mission very soon. The good news is that there are ways that your church can unlock new opportunities to both fund the church, but also are going to unlock opportunities to be missional and to reach your community. So you can, again, go to liveyourparable.com, take the assessment, and find out more about the sprint that's coming up.
If I could just jump in, Dan, real quick, I'd say if you're a pastor watching this, knowing what I know after 25 years in this space, the number one thing I do is take that assessment. It's free, it's simple, it's going to put you on a scale. And following that, someone from Church Economist can follow up and begin to talk to you about how you can begin to move forward with that. So, Dan, thanks for pitching that. But knowing what I know, that's the starting point for you on this journey.